If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Before Epstein was the Franklin cover-up. Before that, the Finders, and long before that, the Cleveland Street Scandal. Pedogate Primer is a concise intro and overview of a growing child abuse epidemic worldwide. It features shocking instances of institutionalized and organizational pedophilia throughout history. Churches, cults, the world of arts and entertainment, the government, NGOs, charities, and major corporations are all complicit or culprits in many instances. Pedogate Primer delves into material that for many may seem like the stuff of conspiracy theories. For this reason, the book draws on academic resources, declassified documents, and other reliable sources, and steers clear of conjecture. Such shocking true stories need no embellishment.
Emailrevealer.com. People ask me all the time, hey Ed, are you still a private investigator? I sure am. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, where you give us your spouse's email address. We trace it back to online dating websites, catch them cheating online. Email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat, locate his hidden assets, locate his hidden bank accounts, find his current place of employment, and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages. Create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com. 800-572-9762.
A flooded home or business is never easy to deal with. You're left with a mess to clean up, having to deal with the insurance company to pay for the damages, not to mention the memories that are lost that you cannot replace. An Aquadam can be another tool in your arsenal to protect your home or business from the floodwaters, a hurricane storm surge, or the king tides. Give Aquadam a call at 707-764-2119 or look us up online at aquadam.net. We can help. We're also offering 10% off the price to anyone who mentions they heard this ad on the Opperman Report.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting, either through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like the show, you can check out our Patreon. I put up about 8 hours of new content on Patreon each month. And you can hear these shows here that we play Monday to Friday on AM/FM radio. You can hear them over on Patreon with the ads and the commercials cut out. But our archives are always free. You can go to Spreaker.com, get our past shows. If you sign up there for free, you get an email notification anytime we put up new content, and there's a chat room where you can discuss the shows with other listeners. And if you go to Spreaker.com, you can listen to our guest, Gordon Woods. He's a returning guest because there's so many developments in his case. He's written a book called, what is that again? Being Put Through Hoops. Let me double check. Yeah, Being Put Through Hoops. .co.uk. Now, the book's not available yet, but you can go to the website, beingputthroughhoops.co.uk, and you can pre-order the book for, don't send any money, but just send them an email. You get put on a list to get an autographed copy of the book once it's published in 2022. Mr. Gordon Woods, are you there?
Good. Hello, I am, Ed. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much for coming back on the show. Why don't you tell us about yourself? Who is Gordon Woods?
Ed, I at the moment I'm a 68-year-old pensioner in Scotland, and within the last few years, after reading several reports of various cases against a world-famous soccer team in Scotland called Celtic Football Club, who were being accused of paedophile activities over a period of 50 years. Now, I had information that I felt was very important to those who were seeking justice. And I came forward because I myself was a victim of a paedophile at the soccer club in the 1960s. And for the past 2 years, we have been fighting not just the football club, we've been fighting the judiciary, Scottish Government and the Scottish media to have our voices heard and get some truth out there to the general public. And that's where I stand today.
And pretty much you're doing this single-handedly, right? You're the one that sparked this whole investigation and reopened the case?
No, there were cases ongoing. And there have been sort of intermittent reports over the last sort of 10 years. But what I did when I came forward, and the vast majority of people who have come forward as victims have remained anonymous. And I fully respect their decision to do that. However, when I came forward, I had some remarkable evidence for the lawyers involved in the cases, and some of the information I had, they hadn't heard before. It was new information for them. And as a result, they asked me if I would be prepared to speak to the newspapers, to television, and to radio, on which I agreed on the condition that I could remain anonymous. However, after the first newspaper reports went out, I realised being anonymous reduces the impact of my story. I have to be seen to be so confident in what I'm saying that I'm prepared to waive my anonymity, and I have now done that, waived my anonymity completely, and whether or not other victims feel the same, but I see myself just now as a spokesperson for those victims who don't want to become, they want to remain anonymous for whatever reasons they have. I respect those reasons. But I've become a spokesperson for them, and I'm quite happy to do so and get as much information over to as many people worldwide as I can of the horrors that have happened in Scotland in the last 50 years.
Now, people can go, like I said, to my archives and look up the show Being Put Through Hoops, Gordon Woods. But why don't you give us an idea of the systemic abuse that was going on in this Celtic football club?
Well, I started in the club. The club started in 1966. And this was an individual, the name of Jim Torbett, who had no footballing experience, he had no managerial experience in football. And he approached or was approached by, I'm not sure which, Celtic Football Club, who at that time had just won the European Cup. They had won the most prestigious trophy in Europe, and they were the first British team to do so. And then suddenly, from the meeting between Jim Torbett and Celtic, the Celtic Boys Club was born. Now, within a year of that being started, I was given a trial as a player, and I joined the club. Now, within months of joining the club, the founder of the Boys Club, Jim Torbett, went on to physically abuse me, sexually abuse me, mentally abuse me for over a year. Now, I spent virtually an entire lifetime with the belief that it was only me, I was the only one this happened to. And only in the late 1980s or late 1990s did I suddenly realise, when I was given information from my mother, that there were others. Not just others, there were dozens, there were hundreds of young 10 to 15-year-old boys who over a period of 40 and 50 years had been systematically abused, not just by one paedophile. As it stands at the moment, there have now been 6 convictions from this one football club alone, and there are many others under investigation. It's been a huge effort to try and get the victims' voices listened to, because we're up against some very, very powerful people, some very powerful organisations, and they're doing everything in their power to keep this under wraps. Unfortunately, the more they try to keep it under wraps, the more determined I am to speak about it and get it out there.
Now, the laws in Scotland are different than they are here in the U.S., right? And over there, if someone's on trial or even if they've been arrested, you're not allowed to talk about it publicly. Am I right?
I can talk. There are certain laws, yes. What we can do is the newspapers will name the individual, but they ask me as a matter of courtesy not to. But what you cannot mention, as soon as an individual is charged with an offence, you are not allowed to mention whether he has or has not had previous convictions. That has to be kept quiet. So whereby the name can be mentioned that, Mr. XYZ appeared in court today charged with molesting a child, they can't mention any previous convictions he may have, because a lot of them don't have previous convictions. But you're not allowed to mention them should they have so.
And I guess that's to not prejudice the jury.
Exactly. The jury must be seen to make the decision based on the evidence that's in front of them on that trial, not to be swayed one way or another by the past.
Now, on the last show, you told us about a fellow that wound up in Kearney, New Jersey.
Yes, there was a situation in Kearney, New Jersey, where a young boy claimed he had been sexually abused whilst on a Celtic Boys Club trip there. As we spoke about it the last time, the decision was made at that time that the individual who had been accused of molesting a young boy was to be returned to Scotland and resign from his position with Celtic. But no charges were placed in America at that time. However, there has been, over the last 10 years or so, some movement and investigations in Kearney, because I believe, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe that some non-disclosure agreements have now been looked at, and it's been decided that they don't have any legal standing. They're not worth the paper they're written on. So the Kearney police started to look into the details of this child abuse in Kearney, But recently it's gone very, very quiet. And it seems to me that the police force or the people investigating this in Kearney are quite happy just to let it go away. Now, I can't mention the journalist's name at this moment in time because I haven't been able to speak to him to ask his permission to use his name, but we have been in touch with a journalist in New York. And the reason for that is because there's now become some reports of children being abused by Celtic officials in New York on a trip in the, get this right, I think it was the late 80s or the early 90s. And he's looking into that. And it was him that told me that Kearney seems to have sort of put it on the back burner for now. But the reason the New York one is very, very interesting is because at that time, there were two individuals, let's call them paedophile A and paedophile B, for argument's sake. Now, when there was a Celtic soccer club manager called Lou McCarry who wrote a book, and in his book he spoke about abuse that was reported to him that had occurred on a Celtic Boys Club trip to New York. Now, at that time, the two paedophiles who were under suspicion were paedophile A and paedophile B. I've now looked into this with the help of a group in Scotland called Spotlight, and they've discovered that paedophile A had already left the club at that point, and paedophile B wasn't on that trip. So that obviously points to there being a paedophile C that up until now we haven't known about, but we're determined to find out who he is.
That's interesting. Now, you spoke earlier about how the cases in Scotland were covered up. Now, why wouldn't there be the hesitation in the United States to follow up on these cases?
Do you know, I don't know how frankly you want me to, or how frank you want me to be, but I mentioned a group we have here called Spotlight. Now, they're named after the American film Spotlight, which was a wonderful movie. Any Americans who haven't seen it, I urge them to watch it. And it's based on the investigations of the Boston Globe, who uncovered a huge paedophile ring in Boston, which involved the Catholic Church. Now, that's part of the fight we have here in Scotland, that Celtic are a club who were founded initially by priests in 1888. And I have no doubt that there is involvement somewhere with the church in keeping this quiet on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean.
Right. In the last show, a listener asked the question, how involved is the Catholic Church in all this? And you answered that the Celtic Football Club was actually founded by Catholic priests.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was founded by Catholic priests in 1888. It was set up initially to be a charitable organisation to help the poor Irish immigrants who had, because of the famine in Ireland, potato famine, the many Irish people had travelled from Ireland to Scotland, and this was set up to assist them.
You know, a couple of years ago, there was a grand jury investigation into the Catholic Church in regards to this activity in Pennsylvania, and they put out a 200-page report. No new priests were arrested. They identified many people in the Catholic Church who were involved in this. There were no new arrests from this report. Now, I had it in the old member section at OppermanReport.com, but I'm going to put it up in the free section on Patreon. It's 200 pages, but there's a 20-page introduction by the grand jury to summarize what they put in the report, and they even said this is so important that we're adding this summary. So I'm encouraging you to go out there and check that out, because this is systemic. And if you read that report, at least the first 20 pages, you'll see how systemic it is. So now you believe that's why it was covered up in Scotland, and you also believe that's why it's been covered up in New Jersey.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I don't have proof, Ed, but
sure.
I don't have any doubt in my heart of hearts. That is what I believe.
But the thing is, they have made a new arrest. You just told me off the air before the show that the man who abused you has been taken into custody.
Yes, he has. But, sometimes when a victim speaks up, especially one who waives their anonymity, it's more difficult for police and media, to ignore that individual. Because I was quite prepared to speak to anybody and everybody. I've spoken to yourself in America. I've spoken to Australian, Italian radio. I've been in the United Kingdom newspaper, some very high quality newspapers like The Guardian. I've been in some of the Scottish tabloids. But there's dozens more victims who have remained quiet because they know within themselves that if they come forward, they're not going to get the help they should be getting. Now, I have fortunately, up until now, and I hope it continues, have been strong enough to ignore the negativity and to keep going and keep going and keep going. Bearing in mind, Ed, I came forward 2 years ago. It was nearly 19, 20 months ago when I made a police report. And 20 months it has taken to get this individual into a court of law. It took 15 months to get him charged and 20 months to get him into a court of law. That's not fast justice by any stretch of the imagination. It's taken a long, long time, and it's been a long, hard fight to get that man into a courtroom.
Would you encourage the other survivors to make the same effort that you have in order to bring justice to this case?
Yes, I would. And I'll tell you why, Ed. One of the fears that a victim has, and this is a fear that the paedophile he inflicts on you from a very, very early stage, possibly as early as in my case, the very first time I was abused. He put the blame on me and continued to do so throughout the whole time he was abusing me. Now, that, as a child, manifests into guilt. You feel this terrible guilt that you did something wrong and that what happened was your fault. Now, that guilt stays with you for the rest of your life. And that's how the paedophiles escape justice, because the victims have this fear that they're not going to be believed if they came forward. I had that fear. For decades upon decades, I lived with what happened to me on my own. I didn't even tell family. It was my cross to bear. It affected my whole life. It affected my school days. It affected my relationship with my parents and my siblings. Even my first wife and my first two children, it affected my relationship with them. And when I decided to come forward, the fear I had when I picked up that telephone to phone the to phone the lawyers initially, my fear was they're not going to believe me. They're not going to believe me. So I made the telephone call and they took all my information, and a few weeks later they called me and they said, we've managed to collaborate an awful lot of what you said, Gordon. We're behind you 100% and we want to take on your case. Now, that was the first hurdle. The lawyers had believed me. I then had to face the police to make the charges. And again, that fear, and the fear it's immense. It's a stomach-churning fear that you're not going to be believed. And the police came and interviewed me, and the total police time was 7 hours of interviews. And only after those had concluded and a few weeks had passed, the police made it quite clear that they believed everything I had said and they were taking it further. I then contacted people like yourself, local newspapers, national television stations. Again, that fear is still there. Are you going to be believed? Am I wasting my time? And over a period of time, those newspapers printed my story. Those television stations broadcast my story. And suddenly the weight began to lift from your shoulders. And then that culminated in only the past few weeks when the person who abused me has appeared in a court of law, which indicates that the Crown Prosecution Service in Scotland also believe me. Now, what I would say to other victims who are staying silent, come forward. You don't have to waive your anonymity. You can still be anonymous. But the important thing is, if your story is honest and true, people will believe you. So get rid of the guilt, get rid of that fear, come forward, because you will be believed.
Now, Gordon, once you got this law firm to take your case, have you referred other victims that you're aware of to this same law firm?
No, I haven't. You see, Ed, I'm going back to 1967 when I was abused. And when I left Celtic Boys Club, when I was forced out of Celtic Boys Club, within a year, a few months of that happening, I ran away from home. I was at the time 15 years of age, and I ran away from home, and I was away for well over a year. As I mentioned in my previous conversation with you, I actually ended up in Santa Monica in California, and that's where I was found and returned back to Scotland. Now, when I did return to Scotland, I immediately left home again and travelled to London and got a job in London and stayed in London for a long time. So I had no contact with other victims, none whatsoever. I didn't know about them. I was always under the impression I was the only one. And as I said, only when I had a conversation with my mother in 1998, literally days before she passed away, where she asked me some questions about what had happened to me at Celtic Boys Club. I was totally shocked by the approach because I didn't even know that my mother had any indication of what was happening. So I haven't had any contact with victims. Only since I came forward 2 years ago have I made contact with a couple of victims who have been prepared to also waive their anonymity. But bear in mind, those victims who wish to remain anonymous, I don't have access to their names or anything. I don't know who they are.
Oh, okay. I thought you did know them, but and you guys were all working together, but I guess not.
No. I mean, the only people who know the names of each and every victims will be the lawyers and Celtic Football Club.
Okay, let's take a little commercial break. Okay, we're talking to Gordon Woods, and he's written a book called Being Put Through Hoops. You can find it at the website beingputthroughhoops.co.uk. Now, Gordon, real quick before we take a break, can you explain to the audience that procedure, how they can email you and pre-order the book?
Yeah, if you go onto the website, there's a link there to order the book, or the email link's there on the website beingputthroughhoops.co.uk. There is a link there.
Okay, and you can also go there too and listen to our previous interview. It's a link up there for that too as well as many BBC and Sonia Poulton, who I think I've had on the show, Sonia Poulton. And many other appearances by Gordon Woods, Being Put Through Hoops. I'll be right back with more of Gordon Woods and the story of this Celtic football club after this message.
And now a word from our sponsors. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. Thank you so much for listening to the Opperman Report. I want to welcome all our new listeners at WWPR 1490 AM in the Tampa Bay area. We're brand new down here. We're getting a nice warm welcome. We have great advertising opportunities for local sponsors, local businesses, but also international websites and international companies too on our other stations in California, Nevada, Utah, and on the internet worldwide. But down here in Tampa Bay, Florida, we have some great opportunities for you to come in and get very, very affordable advertising rates. Get a hold of me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and we'll cut you a good deal.
A flooded home or business is never easy to deal with. You're left with a mess to clean up, having to deal with the insurance company to pay for the damages, not to mention the memories that are lost that you cannot replace. And Aquadam can be another tool in your arsenal to protect your home or business from the floodwaters, a hurricane storm surge, or the king tides. Give Aquadam a call at 707-764-2119 or look us up online at aquadam.net. We can help. We're also offering 10% off the price to anyone who mentions they heard this ad on the Opperman Report.
Emailrevealer.com. People ask me all the time, hey, Ed, are you still a private investigator? I sure am. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, where you give us your spouse's email address. We trace it back to online dating websites, catch them cheating online, email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat, locate his hidden assets, locate his hidden bank accounts, find his current place of employment, and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages. Create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com, 800-572-9762.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Opperman Report. One word, OPPERMAN. You can find our guest today, Gordon Woods, on Twitter. His Twitter handle is Gordon Woods, a Celtic C.S.A. victim survivor. And then it's at Gordon Woods. You can find his website. It's called Being Put Through Hoops. .co.uk, and you can pre-order the book there as well. Now, Mr. Woods, you mentioned earlier that you weren't aware of other victims until pretty much on your mother's deathbed. She asked you if you had been abused here at this soccer club. Now, was this because she saw a change in you and put two and two together? Hey, it was right around the time he left that soccer club. Or were there rumors with other parents that this was going on?
No, what happened, Ed, was my mother was dying of cancer. And as I said earlier, my relationship with my whole family collapsed when I was about 15, 16 years of age. And I hadn't seen my mother for a period of about 8 years. And I got a phone call from a friend to say my mother was very ill with cancer. And I travelled down to the south coast in England to see her. I hadn't seen her for many years. And I spent some time with her. And as I said, a few days before she eventually passed, she asked me about Celtic Boys Club. Now, the reason she asked me was because a Celtic Boys Club official had at that time just been convicted of abusing children and had been sentenced to a prison term. Now, the reason it was in the papers in the south of England was because there was a footballer, a very famous footballer, who was involved in the trial, who had been abused, and he had played for a team in that area. Now, my mother had seen the report and she'd asked me if anything had happened with me, and I denied it. As I've said previously, my mother was ill, she was dying of cancer, she was in pain. There was no way I was going to inflict my history on her at that time in her life. However, despite my denying it and asking her not to discuss it, she then told me, and it shocked me, that when I was 14 years of age, I had written a letter to my abuser. And in the letter, I had asked him to stop hurting me. Now, I apparently had never written the letter, but my father had found it in my bedroom. And he and my mother had discussed it, and he had sent my letter with a covering letter by himself to Celtic Football Club for the attention of Jock Stein, who was the manager at the time. Now, that floored me because I had no indication at all throughout my whole life that my mother and father had suspicions. But I knew then that they were obviously experiencing a great deal of guilt also. Now, I made the decision when my mother died a few days later, and I made the decision at that point that although I had never discussed it with my father and I hadn't seen him for many years, I was going to see my father and I was going to sit down and I was going to discuss it with him and, try and ease his mind as to any guilt he should be feeling on it. Unfortunately, a couple of days after my mother died, my father took a stroke, and I travelled up to Scotland to the hospital he was in, still with the determination to discuss the situation with him when he recovered. Unfortunately, a few days later, he died, and I was never in a position to have that conversation with him.
Gordon, you seem to have really survived all this and came out on top. What do you owe that to? Your faith in God, therapy, or just inner strength?
I don't know, Ed, because throughout my life, I've never been a person who strove to be in the limelight or to be in the public eye. I've always just been, just myself. I think the only change is a few years ago, 11 years ago now, I had a daughter with a foreign national. It was actually a Thai lady. And my daughter was born, and for reasons I don't need to go into, I found myself in 2010 a single father of a 10-month-old baby. I hadn't a clue what to do, Ed, but I took on the responsibility, and in the last 11 years, my daughter's now she'll be 12 next month. I have brought her up as best I can, but I think bringing up my daughter so late in life gave me a different perspective as to how children should be treated. Because what I did realise with my daughter now is I can treat her much more closely than I did my previous children. I had two children who are now in their 40s. But what became very evident was that in my younger days, when in my 20s, and I was still had this horrible memories of my being abused at Celtic, I was unable to give my first two children the attention and the love and the comfort and the deserved from their father. But I have been able to give that to my daughter now. And I think that proved to me when that became a realization that it was time to speak up, because I know what I would do if any individual hurt my daughter the way I was hurt. I would spend the rest of my life in prison, Ed. And I'm sure that every single person with a moral compass feels the same way. And I was just sickened how people in authority, people, whether they were priests or whether they were government officials, newspaper editors, football club chairmen, how they could possibly live with themselves when they were keeping this quiet. I don't know what to put it down to, Ed, but that's the only thing that comes to mind, when I try to dissect it myself.
Gordon, the people who keep it quiet, though, don't you often suspect that they're involved in the same activity?
I have said that, Ed, on another program. It was Sonia Poulton program. She asked me why I thought that they were keeping this quiet. And I said it can only be involvement, because you don't get a whole section of the elite, shall we call them, i.e. the judiciary, the media, news, television, broadcasters, government officials. You don't have all these people who have got a tremendous amount of power collectively helping to keep this undercover, under wraps. There can only be that they themselves or someone close to them in positions of power have something to hide, and they do not want this out in the open.
Now, since you have come public, how many people have been arrested? How many convictions?
Since I came forward, there has been 2 new arrests. There have been no convictions as yet, but there, as I said earlier, there was one individual who appeared in court today. There is another ex-Celtic Boys Club official who is appearing in court on Monday. Now, 2 years ago, you would never, ever have believed that you'd have 2 officials of Celtic Boys Club appearing in court virtually within days of one another. But it's happening. And the more that it's happening, the more people are getting to know about it. And there are an awful lot of people out there at the moment who are very, very concerned that there's more to come out which will implicate them, especially when the civil cases start. These are all criminal cases, but there are also a host of civil cases against Celtic Football Club itself. Those are expected as soon as the COVID situation allows. There's an avalanche of cases against Celtic Football Club and an avalanche of evidence to ridicule their current stance, which is that Celtic Football Club and Celtic Boys Club were 2 separate organisations and one had nothing to do with the other. And that we have a huge amount of evidence that proves the contrary, and that will be presented to a court of law, and I have no doubt that Celtic Football Club will be held responsible.
Do you have any fears that this could still be going on within the football club network in Scotland?
I don't think it's going on in professional football the way it was in the 60s, the 70s, 80s and 90s and possibly the 2000s. Yes, there's nothing that I can do to stop the paedophiles. They'll always be there. They're evil, horrible individuals, and they'll always be there. But all we can do is bring attention to people saying, look, be careful of what's happening with our children, because it's happening worldwide, not just in Scotland. It's happening right now in Scotland. It's happening right now in the USA. not just with soccer, with baseball, athletics, everything. It's not just boys, it's girls. It's children, it's happening everywhere. There's nothing we can do to stop it. It will always be there. What we can do is do something to make the deterrent big enough or hard enough that these people will think twice about abusing a child.
It happens in every sport. Like you said, even wrestling, we have a big scandal here at the Ohio State University. And it seems like where the university's complicit, and the doctor was complicit, and everybody knew what was going on. And they allowed adults to come in and shower and use the shower in the locker rooms where the students were. But then it appears that many people on the board who are involved with these things are very wealthy people donating tons of money to the schools and these institutions. Now, these soccer clubs, are they funded through donations? How do they fund themselves?
They're huge organisations, Ed. You're talking about hundreds of millions of pounds of revenue annually with these clubs. They're huge, and this is a fear I have, that I'm taking these people on, and it's quite daunting to do so. But they're financed by their own supporters. Celtic, for instance, probably have home crowds of 60,000 every week at Celtic Park, and they've just sold a couple of players within the last week for something like £20 million. So there's money there,
right?
But the government has got a lot to answer for in Scotland, and we've got a situation just now going through the law in Scotland, actually being virtually passed in Scottish law, that children as young as 4 years of age in primary schools, children as young as 4 are allowed to choose their own gender. Mm-hmm. If they would rather be a girl rather than a boy, and they want to be called Anne instead of Frank, then the teachers have to address them by their new name, have to allow them to use the other gender's toilets and facilities. But the scary thing, Ed, is the parents would not be involved. The parents would not be told this was happening. That is dark, very, very dark, and it's happening in Scotland at the moment.
Now, you describe how rich and powerful the opposition is in this. Have you been threatened or intimidated in any way?
Yes, I have, Ed. It's water off the duck's back, to be honest with you. I've had a couple of emails. I've had a lot of abuse on Twitter. Recently, I had a couple of telephone calls. I laugh at it. If somebody's at the end of a telephone, threatening to do something, I just laugh and say, look, just go away, you're not affecting me at all. And it doesn't affect me. I put the phone down and I got on with what I was doing, because I've always had the belief, if somebody's going to do something, they're not going to tell you they're going to do it. They're just going to do it, So, no, the threats are there. They're wasting their time. I have started on this road, and I won't deviate until it's concluded.
What about offers of money to keep quiet?
No, I made it quite clear when I first came forward. I told my lawyers, look, tell Celtic Football Club that all I'm asking for is a face-to-face meeting, an apology, and a donation to a children's charity of a sum of money, and I will go back into distance. That letter apparently to Celtic Football Club went unanswered, and as I said to them, the offer was time limited. It's now expired. I've already told them that if I have made any offer, whether or not it involves a non-disclosure agreement, I will not be accepting the offer, regardless of its amount, and I want my day in court with Celtic Football Club.
Have they ever acknowledged receipt of that letter that your father sent?
No, they haven't, and unfortunately, I can't prove it one way or another. To let you be aware that Celtic Football Club have acknowledged nothing.
Right.
Not only have they not acknowledged receipt of a letter, they haven't. I mean, the vast majority of the correspondence between football club, the football club, Celtic Football Club, and lawyers go unanswered. Just the same as the letters that are sent to government officials in Scotland go unanswered. My own letters to our First Minister and Justice Secretary have went unanswered. They're not interested.
Is it possible that your parents did receive a reply and just you were unaware of it?
Yes, that's possible, but It's also a thing that if they had a reply, my mother would have mentioned that. She didn't.
Right.
She didn't mention it. And sadly, as I mentioned before, I was unable to clarify a lot of things with my father before he passed away.
Gordon Woods, we only have about 3 minutes left. What do you want to leave us with?
I think what I want to leave your listeners with, Ed, is that accept that this is happening throughout the world and take care, watch what's happening with children. Remember that when I was 13, 14, 15, this started, there wasn't the same spotlight on children's behaviours as there are now. And this is happening through all sports, not just sports. You have to look for your school, primary school, secondary school pupils. It's everywhere. And yes, just keep a very, very close eye on changes in your child. There were changes in me when I was 13 years of age. My parents just didn't notice it. I was self-harming for a long time. My parents didn't notice the scars because I kept them well hidden. But, there are signs that should be able to be picked up now, because since I was abused, it's 60 more years of experiencing abuse and experiencing the mental state of children and how they react to trauma.
Well, Gordon Woods, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. And you have an open invitation to keep us updated on this case of what's going on. People can go to your website, beingputthroughhoops.co.uk, and pre-order your book. And there's also some tips on here. There's information of recent arrests and convictions, all kinds of good content there. So, Gordon Woods, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
And now a word from our sponsors. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Before Epstein was the Franklin cover-up. Before that, the Finders. And long before that, the Cleveland street scandal. Pedogate Primer is a concise intro and overview of a growing child abuse epidemic worldwide. It features shocking instances of institutionalized and organizational pedophilia throughout history. Churches, cults, the world of arts and entertainment, the government, NGOs, charities, and major corporations are all complicit or culprits in many instances. Pedogate Primer delves into material that for many may seem like the stuff of conspiracy theories. For this reason, the book draws on academic resources, declassified documents, and other reliable sources, and steers clear of conjecture. Such shocking true stories need no embellishment.
Emailrevealer.com. People ask me all the time, hey Ed, are you still a private investigator? I sure am. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, where you give us your spouse's email address. We trace it back to online dating websites, catch them cheating online. Email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat, locate his hidden assets, locate his hidden bank accounts, find his current place of employment, and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages. Create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com. 800-572-9762. Thank you so much for listening to the Opperman Report. I want to welcome all our new listeners at WWPR 1490 AM in the Tampa Bay area. We're brand new down here. We're getting a nice warm welcome. We have great advertising opportunities for local sponsors, local businesses, but also international websites and international companies too, on our other stations in California, Nevada, Utah, and on the internet worldwide. But down here in Tampa Bay, Florida, we have some great opportunities for you to come in and get very, very affordable advertising rates. Get a hold of me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and we'll cut you a good deal.
A flooded home or business is never easy to deal with. You're left with a mess to clean up, having to deal with the insurance company to pay for the damages, not to mention the memories that are lost that you cannot replace. And Aquadam can be another tool in your arsenal to protect your home or business from the floodwaters, a hurricane storm surge, or the king tides. Give Aquadam a call at 707-764-2119 or look us up online at aquadam.net. We can help. We're also offering 10% off the price to anyone who mentions they heard this ad on the Opperman Report.
Hey guys, if you like the show and you want to show your support, check out the Opperman Report Patreon. You can go there and become a member for $3 a month. We have all the shows that you hear Monday through Friday on AM/FM radio. We have all those shows, but we cut out the ads, so you can hear that content ad-free. There's a $5 section where we put up all the old member section shows are going up over there. And then there's a $10 section where we have brand new content. 8 hours of exclusive content per month goes up there in the $10 section. But listen, I put up a lot of free stuff too. We put up documents, court documents, photographs, announcements. So you should make the Opperman Report Patreon a stop. You should stop there once a day and check out what's going on over there. That's Opperman Report Patreon.